They said there was a single plant so powerful it could supply fiber, build homes, heal wounds, and outperformed synthetic giants. Then they made it disappear. Nearly a century ago, USDA scientists logged yields that dwarfed cotton, and officials hailed it as a miracle for modern industry. So why did lawmakers suddenly treat it like a public enemy number one? Follow the paper trail to discover how a natural solution that threatened billion-dollar empires became an outlaw overnight. In the spring of 1916, Lister Dewey walked the rows at Arlington Farm, notebook in hand. He was no celebrity, just a government botanist quietly obsessed with the promise of hemp. Each morning, before the city woke, Dewey recorded the height of stalks, the color of leaves, and the weight of fiber stripped from each plot. His diaries, now yellowed and brittle, tell a story lost between the lines of official reports. Dewey's notes detail yields of 1 to 2 tons of fiber per acre in the best seasons, numbers that outpace cotton and rival timber, all from a crop that matured in a single summer. He catalogued dozens of hemp varieties, tested different soils, and refined retting methods, always searching for the perfect balance of strength and softness in the finished fiber. These were meticulous experiments, small victories written in careful script, evidence that a different industrial future might be possible. Some years, rain drowned the seedlings, or frost cut the harvest short. Still, Dewey persisted. He sent samples to paper mills and exchanged letters with farmers across the Midwest, convinced that hemp could transform American industry and reduce dependence on imported fiber and timber. Yet his work drew little fanfare. As the 1930s approached, hemp plots at Arlington shrank. Dewey's entries grew terse, frustration seeping between the lines as political winds shifted and funding dried up. The farm that once hummed with possibility fell quiet, while larger economic and legal forces gathered beyond the fields. The potential he saw, acres of fast-growing green turning sunlight into fiber and oil, remained buried in his diaries, waiting for someone to notice. In the shadow of the Capitol, one scientist's careful records stood as proof of what hemp could deliver, even as the world moved on. Modern science leaves no room for nostalgia. Today, life cycle assessments put hemp's raw efficiency into numbers that industry cannot ignore. On the same plot where cotton yields 1 ton of fiber, hemp delivers 10 tons. That is not a rounding error, it is a tenfold leap in output, using a fraction of the water and almost no pesticides. In European field trials, fiber hemp produces 10 to 12 tons per hectare in just 4 months, while cotton struggles to reach 1. Where cotton drains rivers and demands chemical rescue, hemp thrives on rain alone in temperate zones, its deep roots pulling nutrients from untouched soil layers. The environmental ledger is even more lopsided. Cotton's global footprint releases up to 20 tons of carbon dioxide per hectare. Polyester and other synthetics, spun from oil, push that number even higher. 50 to 100 tons emitted for every hectare of feedstock. Hemp, by contrast, locks away 10 to 15 tons of carbon dioxide per hectare each year. Its rapid growth fixes carbon in stalks and roots at a speed that rivals young forests, and the carbon stays buried in soil long after harvest. In Canadian and French trials, fiber hemp fields sequestered up to 16 tons of carbon dioxide per hectare, verified by independent audits. Even under less than ideal conditions, the crop remains net negative, drawing down more greenhouse gas than it releases, season after season. For the textile giants, these numbers are not just inconvenient, they are existential. Hemp can replace cotton on less than a third of the land, with a climate impact that runs in reverse. Each bale harvested is a subtraction from the carbon ledger, not an addition. In a world where every industry faces pressure to cut emissions, these metrics turn an old crop into a modern threat. Wallace Carothers was not a household name, but inside DuPont's Wilmington labs, his work promised to rewrite the rules of industry. In 1934, Carothers and his team filed the first nylon patent, a claim staked on molecules built from oil, not fields. By 1938, nylon was ready for its debut, a synthetic fiber spun from petrochemicals, protected by a fortress of patents. The company's internal memos were blunt. Natural fibers like cotton, wool, and hemp meant thin margins and unpredictable yields, while nylon offered control from raw material to finished thread. DuPont's profit model was simple and ruthless. Cotton and hemp were commodities, traded on open markets, exposed to drought, pests, and the whims of global supply. Nylon, by contrast, was a branded product, manufactured in closed-loop factories, insulated by intellectual property. The company's own projections showed nylon could be sold at several times its production cost, especially in high-value markets like women's stockings and industrial yarns. In 1939, DuPont unveiled nylon at the New York World's Fair, marketing it as stronger than steel and finer than silk. 4 million pairs of stockings sold out in days. For DuPont, every acre not planted in hemp or cotton was a future market for nylon. The economics favored the synthetic. No need for land, no weather risk, no labor strikes. Each ton of nylon replaced fiber that once grew in American soil, shifting profits from farmers to chemical engineers. With Carothers' patents locked in, DuPont stood poised to dominate, while the old crops faded quietly from the ledger. On August 2, 1937, the House chamber buzzed with talk of a new menace. Harry Anslinger, chief of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, stood before Congress and delivered a warning that would echo for decades. He spoke of marijuana, not as a fiber crop, but as a threat to public safety, a drug that, in his words, led to insanity, violence, and death. Sensational headlines followed, splashed across the pages of William Randolph Hearst's newspapers. Killer weed, assassin of youth. The public, already anxious from lurid crime stories and racialized fear, found a new villain. The Marijuana Tax Act moved quickly through Congress. On paper, it was a tax measure. Every grower, processor, and distributor of cannabis, including industrial hemp, would be forced to register and pay a prohibitive fee. In practice, it was a chokehold. The paperwork alone was enough to drive small operators out. Any violation, intentional or not, could bring fines or jail time. Doctors pushed back. Dr. William Woodward, representing the American Medical Association, testified that the law was rushed, built on fear instead of evidence. He warned Congress that the burden of the bill was placed squarely on the medical profession, and that there was no evidence that marijuana is a dangerous drug. His words fell flat. The bill passed with little debate. By the end of 1937, hemp was caught in the same net as psychoactive cannabis. Fields that once promised fiber and oil now carried the weight of suspicion. The machinery of government, stoked by headlines and political ambition, had frozen an entire industry in place. For farmers and scientists, the rules had changed overnight and there was no way back. In 1942, American farmers found themselves holding government contracts for a crop they had been told to avoid. The War Hemp Industries Corporation sprang up almost overnight, distributing certified seed and blueprints for new processing plants across the Midwest. The USDA rolled out the now famous Hemp for Victory film, turning hemp from a legal liability into a patriotic necessity. Incentives were clear: guaranteed prices for every ton delivered, loans for equipment, even draft deferments for those who signed up. By the summer of 1943, Fields that had been empty a year before were thick with hemp, over 150,000 acres at the program's peak. The same government that had nearly erased the crop just 5 years earlier now handed out seed and technical bulletins, urging farmers to fill the gap left by lost Asian jute. For a brief window, policy bent to strategic need, and hemp was not just tolerated, it was essential. In 2014, a quiet shift began. The US Farm Bill opened the door for state-run pilot programs, allowing researchers and farmers to plant hemp legally for the first time in decades. Fields once dormant sprouted green again, this time under careful watch and strict reporting. 4 years later, Congress went further. The 2018 Farm Bill removed hemp from the list of controlled substances, treating it as an ordinary crop if its THC content stayed below 0.3%. Suddenly, hemp was legal from coast to coast. Modern growers wasted no time. New varieties were bred for fiber, seed, and even building materials. In Colorado and Kentucky, processing plants sprang up to turn stalks into bioplastics and insulation. Universities launched research on hemp's use in regenerative agriculture, soil improvement, and carbon capture. For the first time in nearly a century, American farmers could choose hemp without fear of raids or red tape. What began as a cautious experiment now pulses through rural economies, promising a different kind of abundance. Today, hemp remains legal in dozens of countries, yet US fields still cover less than 1% of the acres that were planted in 1943. As climate pressures mount and soil health declines, the question is simple: will we reclaim solutions buried by fear, or keep paying the terrible price for forgetting them?